Hi, when moving on from codependency after we've grown, it's really hard to look forward and continue with the process of moving on without having a conversation about anxiety. Anxiety and codependency usually go hand in hand. So if we're struggling with codependency, there's a good chance we have a pretty high rate of anxiety. Just because we have anxiety doesn't always lead to codependency, but oftentimes if we're struggling with codependency, we usually experience increased levels of anxiety. So in talking about moving forward from codependent traits, we want to learn maybe how to deal or better deal with our anxiety. So here's a few tips and tricks. They all come from How to Stop Chasing Rejection. It's found on page 85. You can find the book on Amazon.com. So here are a few steps that you could walk through when you struggle with anxiety. So the first thing we want to do is be able to sort of like tune into ourselves so that we can be aware of what's going on with us, so we can have those like alarms go off that tell us, oh, I'm about to experience anxiety. And normally we would experience that anxiety, and that causes us to reach for our partner, and that's when all those codependent traits come out. The demandingness, being controlling, being intrusive, being jealous, all of those things, that fear of abandonment that's driven by that anxiety, which it's kind of like this cycle, right? I get scared I'm going to get replaced, which makes me anxious, and then my anxiety makes me even more scared I'm going to get replaced. So one kind of feeds the other. So what we want to do is, first of all, be aware of ourselves. So here are some questions you can kind of walk through to help you be more aware so that you can stop yourself before you engage in some of those behaviors. For the first one is, when I get anxious, I feel it in my where. Where in your body do you feel anxiety? Some people feel anxiety in their throat. It can feel like restricted or tight. Some people feel pressure on their chest, right? So it could be like an elephant sitting on my chest. It just feels heavy. Some people feel sick to their stomach. So you can have like stomach problems or a queasy stomach. You feel sick to your stomach. Some people can feel tightness in their back, right? Some people get tingly hands or feet, so you can feel numbness or tingling in your hands or feet. Some people just feel like your brain gets hot, right? So it gets kind of fuzzy up there. So just think, for you, if you struggle with anxiety with codependent traits, where do you feel it in your body, right? So that's the first one. You ask yourself, where do you feel it? The next one is, when it feels like this, what does it feel like? Or when I feel it in these places in my body, what does it feel like? So we mentioned it could feel tingly, it could feel hot, it could feel like pressure. It can actually feel cold. You can feel coldness in those areas. It can just feel warm. Maybe it just feels fuzzy. So what does it feel like for you? So you're being mindful, right? Where in my body do I feel this? And then what does it feel like in my body? And that's really good for us to know, because then when we start to feel these feelings, then it's like, oh, this is me experiencing anxiety. This is usually where I feel it. This is usually what it feels like. And then leading into the third one, what is your normal go-to response? So when you're feeling anxious and when you start to feel however that anxiety, feels within you, what do you normally do then? What would we see you doing? It could be yelling. Maybe you get really like freaked out and you start yelling at someone, or maybe you start crying. Maybe you pull inside and you withdraw. Maybe you go silent. Those are very common behaviors. It could also be that you now you're going to go find someone and find something wrong that they've done, so you can kind of like get on them for doing something wrong. Or you could go give someone a job, right? You're trying to deal with your anxiety by bossing someone else around. So normally, what would you do when you begin to feel this anxiety? What are those behaviors that are sort of like your coping skills that for most of us, it causes problems in the relationship? So it's really important to know that, because moving forward, this is the pattern we want to begin to interrupt, right? Because otherwise it becomes this shameful cycle. You feel that anxiety, you have those scary thoughts, and then you engage in those behaviors, and then you immediately feel bad about it. You feel ashamed, right? And then the shame produces more anxiety, and so then we start the whole process over again. So getting out of that pattern, what we want to do now is recognize or be more aware of, oh, this is anxiety, this is what I normally do, let me not, right? And now I'm going to go deal with myself. So great things to do is to learn how to exhale. So it's not enough to breathe, right? We really want to learn how to get all of the air out of our diaphragm. So we're taking deep breaths, but we're really focused on trying to get it out as much as we can. So in the past, tricks that I've learned pretend like you're blowing the, I don't know, whatever that weed is, and you're blowing the petals off if you've ever done that. You could also imagine you have a straw and you're trying to push all the air out through a straw. These are tips that a nurse who worked in an emergency room and dealt with a lot of people who had panic attacks. These are tricks that he taught me. So thinking of that, you're really trying to exhale because that's what starts to slow you down. So the inhaling can often speed you up if you just inhale. That's why you really want to focus on forcing as much air out as you can. So take like 4 deep breaths and really 4 big exhalations, pushing that air out of your mouth and getting it out of your diaphragm. Obviously you're going to have to breathe in, right? But you're naturally going to breathe in. So you got to focus and make yourself breathe out. So once you do that and you do it like 4 good times, then another way to kind of get through that, what was just going on, is to look at what are 3 things I was just feeling and what are 3 thoughts I was just thinking. So any emotions from the book, in the example that's in the book, it's, mad, frustrated, afraid. Very normal, right? If you have a disappointment, which can kind of like cut at that jealous bone or that jealousy that we might feel, right? Then yeah, you're going to get mad, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to feel afraid. Some of the thoughts that were identified in the example, he always does this. He just uses me. Frustrated. When am I ever going to learn? I'm so dumb. 3, afraid. If we can't figure this out, he'll leave me and find someone else. So those were just some examples of what this person was thinking in this scenario from the book. So you can see how it's pretty extreme. We tend to go to crisis mode. We tend to underestimate our ability to handle the situation. So that's why it goes to like the worst of the worst. But once you exhale and you write it down, then you're kind of like, okay, right? That's kind of extreme. This person doesn't always do this. Just because we can't figure out this one issue doesn't mean the whole relationship is doomed and going to end, right? And also, they're not, maybe they are using you, which you'd have to look at, but in this scenario, the person wasn't being used. That's just where their mind went when it went in crisis mode because they were kind of panicking over the situation. So being mindful, in moving forward from codependency, it is important that we learn how to deal with anxiety. If you are someone who struggles with anxiety, you can always look up more. And again, if you're ever super overwhelmed, then you could seek help in your local area. I always have places that you can find help in the description boxes. But some places would be something like 988. If you're in the United States, you could call 988. And that would route you to a local crisis mobile unit in your area or straight to the suicide hotline. You could also contact someone through Psychology Today to find a local professional in your area. There's other programs through your counties. You could check with the local health departments that you could find a therapist. You could also, if you have insurance, check with your insurance who's paneled with them. The thing that I would recommend is just don't wait. Don't wait to get help for yourself. So in moving forward, it's really important if you want to get through codependency, we have to keep educating ourselves on what is healthy in relationships. That way we're sure that we're not engaging in unhealthy, unsafe behaviors, and also that we're not engaging it, accepting it from someone else, that we're putting in those boundaries that we need to. But first we have to learn what is healthy and what is safe and what isn't when it comes to relationships. Another one, educate ourselves on what boundaries are and how to get out of that toxic cycle and how to overcome barriers we face when we struggle with codependent traits. Also, write down what our values are, learn how to live within them, find someone with the shared value system, and keep working on the anxiety and interrupting that pattern for ourselves so we can truly break out of it and begin to have a different relationship with the people who are closest with us in our lives. This way, we stop chasing rejection and we stop making relationships a prison. So there's lots of videos on how to stop chasing rejection. Again, you can find the book on Amazon.com. There's lots more out there for you, right? You deserve much more than to just keep chasing rejection. So I hope you take the time to learn and to begin to address those traits if you struggle with them. Take good care. It's been such a pleasure going through the book with you, and I'll see you in the next one.